Prepare pocket and flap for tote, front and back as follows. Reinforce and clip one edge of pocket band at small dots. Press under 1/2 inch on remaining edge of band. With right sides together, pin band to sides and lower edge of pocket, matching small dots and fold lines. Stitch, trim seam. This step is telling us to do a couple different things. The first thing it is telling us to do is to reinforce and clip. When you see words that are bolded, this indicates that there are further instructions on how to complete the steps in the sewing directions in the beginning of your instruction sheets. In the sewing directions section, the reinforce and clip instructions are the last instruction in that section. The reinforce and clip direction reads, using fine stitches, stitch along seam line for 1 inch on either side of large or small dot. Clip seam allowance to stitching, or to point indicate it in individual directions, being careful not to clip into stitching. Let the picture that accompanies the step help you complete this direction.
Alright, so we're going to go ahead and complete the first part of step 1, which is to reinforce and clip. You are going to take your number 3 piece, which has already been marked. You are going to find your dot. Your dot should be 9 inches in from the side on both parts. You are then going to do the reinforcing stitch. To reinforce and stitch, you're going to stitch across the circle. We are not stitching two things together, so we do not need to back stitch. Go ahead and line up your center red line with the circle. Go ahead and start stitching when you are ready. We don't care if it's exactly 1 inch, we are just doing a reinforcing stitch, so if it is slightly longer or slightly shorter, that is okay. Go ahead and pull it out and clip your strings with your thread clipper. This is your first reinforcing stitch. You are going to clip your strings along the way so they do not get tangled. You will do this on both parts and then go ahead and clip into the circle with your shears, making sure you do not cut through your reinforcing stitch.
To complete the second part of step 1, we will press under 1/2 inch on remaining edge of band.
Once you reinforce and clip your band, you want to go ahead and press up 1/4 inch on the other side. The important thing is it is the opposite side of where you clipped. So go ahead and press this. It does not matter if it is exactly 1/4. You just need to press up the edge. When you are doing this, you can use the steam on the iron. This is going to set this in. If you press the button on the top, it's going to set the press in, which is then going to end up looking like this across your band.
To complete the last part of step 1, with right sides together, pin band to side and lower edges of pocket, matching small dots and fold lines. Stitch, trim seam. Make sure to utilize the picture that accompanies the direction. Oftentimes, it will help make sense of the direction you are reading.
Now that we have reinforced and clipped our band, we are going to go ahead and attach it to our outside pocket. The first thing we want to do is to make sure that the outside pocket's fold line that you marked earlier is on the top. Go ahead and flip that back over. We are now going to attach the band with right sides together. When we discuss right sides together, we want the two sides that we want people to see to be touching each other. So you're going to go ahead and put the band on top of the pocket with the two clips at the bottom. Once this is lined up, go ahead and grab the side of your band and bring it to the top. When we are looking at this to check if you are correct, you can also see that you have a fold line on your band that lines up with the fold line on your pocket. Marking helps to make sure that you are following the directions correctly. With this step, you want to check two things. The first one is that you are even on the top. You want raw edges to be even. The second is that you pinch the corners. By pinching the corners, it allows for the piece to fit and for you to be able to put things into this pocket when the project is finished. Once you have things lined up, you are going to go ahead and pin. When you pin, you want to make sure that you are pinning to sew. When you pin to sew, you want to have the head of the pin pointing out so that you can grab it once you come across it when you are sewing. Go ahead and pin along the band. When you get towards the corner, you want to make sure that you have a pin on each side of the corner. You don't want to pin this excess material down because you're not going to be sewing over it. So I'm going to be putting a pin on both sides of my corner to prepare me for sewing the band to the outside pocket. Continue pinning all the way around to get you ready to sew. To complete the step of sewing the band onto the pocket, we're going to go ahead and start with a back stitch. Anytime you are sewing two pieces of material together, you are going to back stitch. So go ahead and start with about 2 or 3 stitches, back stitch, and you are ready to go. My focus for this stitch is going to be on the outside. The reason I am not looking in the middle is because I know that my needle is going to stitch straight. I need to make sure that my steering is straight. For this project, the seam allowance is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to be looking at the 4/8 mark out on the outside as I complete this stitch. Once you are ready, go ahead and start to sew. When you come up to a needle, pull it out. Do not sew over the pin for the fact that it could break your needle, and we do not want that. This is a nice, simple, straight stitch. Allow the machine to pull the material through for you. You do not need to put any pressure on it. As you come to the corner, you are going to prep for your pivot. You are coming up to the excess material that you prepped when you pinned the pocket. You are going to start with this material in the down position. You are going to stitch as close to the corner as possible. As you get closer, you may want to use your hand wheel so that you do not overshoot the corner. To pivot, make sure that you leave the needle in the downward position. You're going to lift up your presser foot, turn your pocket underneath. This excess material now is going to be pushed back to the other side to lay flat. Lower your presser foot and continue to stitch. You're going to do the same thing on the second corner. Make sure that you are leaving your needle in the down position when you pivot, and that you are slowing down when you're coming to the corner so that you do not overshoot it. That excess material is coming into play. This time we want to have it laying away from the needle. Come up. As I get close, I'm going to use my hand wheel to bring me into the corner. Leave the needle in the downward position. To complete my pivot, I'm lifting up my presser foot, turning the material. This excess corner is getting pushed underneath. And I am now going to sew up the side. Continue the stitch until you finish it at the top, remembering to back stitch to finish this stitch. Once you get past the corners, it is the hardest part. It is a straight shot from there with your straight stitching. And coming up to the end, remember to sew all the way to the end before you start your back stitch. Now reverse and then go forward. Once we have sewn the band onto the pocket, we need to go ahead and trim the seam allowances. To trim the seam allowances, we want to go ahead and move the flaps to the inside so that we do not catch them when we are cutting. When you trim seam allowances, there's a couple things that you need to know. One is that you want to cut only the seam allowance, nothing underneath. We're going to be cutting it in half on each side, which is about going to bring it to 1/4 of an inch. To do this, make sure that your shears remain on the table. This is going to allow you to cut nice and straight. You're going to do this on all 3 sides. Be careful when you get to the corner that that excess material is not going to be cut. Turning this way, you're going to go ahead and continue the process. The directions are not going to tell you to trim the corners. You just need to know that. It's something that the directions assume that you are going to do. You are going to go ahead and finish trimming this side, but I want to come back to this corner. Anytime that you have a corner, you're going to trim it. To trim a corner, you are just trimming the corner of it off. This eliminates bulk. Anytime that we are trimming, we are trying to eliminate bulk. This is going to allow our material to lay flatter and have a nicer look on the outside once we are finished. Make sure that you are not grabbing anything else besides that seam allowance so that we do not make any holes in our project. Again, we come to the corner. Go ahead and snip that corner off. This is an assumption that most pattern pieces or most pattern directions are going to assume that you know. This is the finished product with all seams trimmed, including the corners.